How's it going, everyone? Jiivita here with another overview for testing 228. This adds three it looks like at first small things, however they are pretty profound. So first off, we have glass panes now, so no longer do we have to use gleam signs to kind of simulate panes of glass. Not to mention the glass panes come in three different varieties. So we have our plain, stylish, and ornate styles right here. I like to think of these as the plain being what you use to see through, and stylish and ornate you place to see or to look at. So, but moving along, the next thing is we have now beacon visualization baked into the UI. So turn my UI back on and turn on plot view, and now the beacon slash settlement visualization little mini map thing pops up automatically below your crosshair. And so now even console players will be able to get an idea of what's going on with their plots, their settlement, and why things might be going awry. It doesn't have like the little map legend like the debugging menu version has, but it's still a huge improvement over having nothing at all. So as you can see here, the little kind of dotted lines, that's the reserved areas. The solid is the plotted view, and then there'd be like shaded in areas depending on settlement conditions. But yeah, so all in all, really nice. Whenever you're adding a plot, this does temporarily hide to give you the little tooltip saying you can press the button to add a plot, but then it pops right back up as long as you're not looking somewhere where it has a valid spot to add a plot. So all in all, very, very nice. And then finally, if we come over here, we have a whole new type of chisel. This is added through the forging system, so it's not technically a new chisel, but it adds a whole new type of chiseling to the game. It is targeted with the venerable gum, and yeah, it's only one new forge boon, but this practically adds 3 new chisels to the game. It's really, really crazy. So taking a closer look at this lattice chisel, you can forge these using any chisel, so it really doesn't matter which one you use. It does make sense to use one that has higher durability, but hopefully is not too hard to forge. These are also really easy to forge, so even if you're using something that has a low flexibility, it's really no problem at all to get this forge boon. The one thing that's a little bit strange is when you mouse over it, it says lattice, but then when you right click, it says special effect sizes, which kind of alludes to its secondary function that we'll get to here in a moment. And we'll cover how to forge this a little bit later as well. But basically, you're just going to go up to any block that you could previously chisel and just whack it, and it will start the lattice process, I suppose. If you want to hit it more times, it will actually cycle through up to 4 different sizes. So really crazy, just the number of different things you can do with this. So that's kind of where the sizes from the tooltip kind of plays in. So that's like 2 chisels almost right there in and of itself, but we can come along and use either a square unforged chisel, just a regular square chisel, or a regular bevel chisel, and we can start adding and removing these arms. And probably my favorite thing about this new chisel is that if you make a mistake, you just hit the part that you made the mistake on. You can just add and remove these arms. The one kind of qualifier or drawback is that once you get down to this one little cube right here, that is as small as you can get. You can't remove this central cube, but you can come along and at any time add and remove the little arms off of it. So very, very nice. Another little thing is that it's kind of hard to hit the top and bottom if it's right at eye level, but certainly there's a number of ways to work around that. You can either use an unchiseling chisel to reset the block, or break and replace, or just make a little hole or some sort of fancery to be able to hit the top or bottom. The lattice chisel will always default to this kind of square lattice, but you can use a bevel chisel and it will immediately shift it over to the beveled lattice, and then you can use the bevel chisel to add and remove the pieces. If you decide you want to go back to the square, all you do is switch over to a square chisel and hit it. If you want to go back to bevel, you just back and forth, back and forth. Very, very nice, and as far as chiseling goes, extremely user-friendly compared to the previous two chiseling systems, of where if you made a mistake, you just had to break and replace the block. Certainly the unchisel chisel helps a lot in that regard, but pretty darn nice. And just the things you can do with this system alone are crazy. Like, you can make these really nice kind of picket fences, and really lends itself nicely to industrial, but you can even make things like icicles, kind of like a lattice overhanging type awning type thing. And yeah, maybe use gleam and chisel it down to the smallest size. That's another thing. Once you get the shape that you like, you can just come along and change the shape of it, which is just bonkers. So come over here and make all sorts of like interesting little kind of decorative lighting, or maybe you want some really low profile lighting. And yeah, this is the smallest little, whatever you want to call that, of the bevel chisel, and it's just a tiny little dot. I mean, look at that. It's, you know, hardly even notice it's there, but it's still providing all the light of a full block of gleam. So very, very nice. Not to mention, it does have kind of a nice little point that you can make all sorts of things like the icicles and whatnot. But coming inside, like I was saying before, you can make all sorts of kind of industrial looking things. The arcing electricity didn't quite turn out as great as I was hoping, but yeah, it can come up with all sorts of really crazy designs. Got some kind of dripping toxic sludge here coming out of this pipe, kind of some damaged wiring, or some exposed wiring, or just some decorative window treatments. So very, very nice. Not to mention, you can just about make ladders out of these. You do have to kind of jump, but yeah, look at this. Never before has vertical movement been that easy. So it's not true ladders, so to speak, and of course, one of the huge downfalls of this kind of design is that you really need a soft landing, because it's pretty much impossible to traverse down them safely. But that was a ladder designed to be used with the jump epic, but you can certainly make ladders that work well with regular jump height. You just kind of have to use more blocks or travel laterally a bit more. So this works because we're taking advantage of the different sizes of these poles, so each block is progressively smaller as it goes up, giving you just that tiny sliver to stand on. So you're not quite sure what was going on. Not to mention, we have a new option for making signs and verbiage, so to speak. I have to say this one turned out pretty nice. So taking a look at the glass panes, these will use up the mesh limit for the time being, but eventually they will be rendered as voxels, or essentially regular blocks, and will not count towards the mesh limit. So eventually you'll be able to go pretty much crazy with these things. And they are colorable. The color is determined by the gleam used to craft them, so whatever gleam color you can get is the color of glass you can use. And pretty crazy. But as you can see here, the colors even intermingle with each other. So in other words, when I look through this red and blue glass, I see purple. So very, very nice, and should allow for some really interesting design options, not to mention stained glass windows. And yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, look at this ornate window. Very, very nice. It's a little bit harder to look through, but that's why I was talking about earlier. It's like these are meant to be looked at, whereas the plain ones are meant to be looked through. But even the stylish is, well, quite stylish. And these glass panes work just like doors in that you can place them on pretty much any edge of the block. So once placed here, it's technically taking up this block space, so I can't place another one. However, if I want to make a box, I can place them just on the other side of the block line. And Yeah, very, very nice. In other words, you can use this to your advantage to determine essentially where you want the extra detail. So this window right here is technically just outside of the wall, allowing me to place all of these blocks in the windowsill. However, if I wanted to put extra detail on the outside, I cannot place anything in this space, but certainly can place everything around that area. And then the exact opposite, I can come over here and this window is placed inside of the wall, allowing me to put this directly on the outside of the window. But if I go inside, it's the inverse problem in that I can't place anything in the windowsill. So, limitation of the system, but still allows you to go either direction with wherever you want the detail to be. Not to mention, window panes can be placed on themselves, so there's no need to place a structure first in order to place the window panes like you would have to with the gleam sign. And of course, you can place them horizontally, so if you wanted to make a glass roof or skylight or just, you know, a glass floor between levels, you can certainly do that. Just keep in mind that these do not block weather whatsoever, so if it rains, it will come straight through this and rain inside as well. So might use this at least with some sort of roof overhead if you don't like that effect. Really nice feature of the Ordinate glass panes is that they have, I guess, sort of attached textures that kind of switch out automatically. So just by itself, it has this really nice little start pattern, but as you start to add onto it, you can see that they intelligently kind of switch. So in a straight run, you get this kind of pattern, but we start going up, you now get a corner piece, and then that pattern starts running vertically instead of horizontally. So as you can see, without really even thinking about it, we got these nice corner pieces, a center piece, and then the kind of, I guess, T pieces in between. Okay, I think that covers testing 228 pretty good. Let's take a quick look at how to forge the new Lattice Chisel. I would recommend speccing your character for forging, which can be attained at essentially around level 17 if you go straight for it, but basically it's just max vitality, power, intelligence, along with the attribute bonus, and then down below under Epic 2, pick up the Forging Epic. Only takes 34 skill points in, which you'll get around level 17 or 18. Once you have your forging spec, all you really need is some sort of boon compound, venerable gum, and setting resin. Optionally, you can take boon removal, boon transmutation, or deconstruction resin just in case there's mistakes made, but those aren't strictly necessary. You can get by using very basic boon compounds. However, if you use the fancier ones, it'll just speed up the process, allowing you to use less compounds, but then again, you're using more expensive compounds, so there lies the balance. But let's begin the forging process. We're going to start off by placing at least probably 4 venerable gums. That usually seems to work well for me. The only 2 boons that you'll get from this is the Unchiseling Chisel and the Lattice Chisel. So there's a 50-50 chance of getting the boon you're actually after here. But you can start off using your boon compound ones, or if you have a fancier compound you want to use, go for it. So there we go. First off, we got the lattice work boon right there. So now pretty much all further points should go towards this one. The unchiseling and the lattice work are incompatible with each other. However, if we did get the unchiseling boon, we could use either the boon removal solvent to remove it and then try again for a different one. You could also use boon transmute solvent. However, these are quite expensive, but would be a little bit more reliable to get the one you're after. Or you could use a deconstruction resin to basically scrap the entire forging process and get back at least some of your forging materials along with the item. So the cheapest option would be to use the boon removal solvent. We can go ahead and just play around with that. So it rips the boon off, and then we'll essentially re-roll And we missed that time, so we can just continue placing our boon compounds as normal. And there we go. This time we got the unchisel boon, so we'll just continue like we have the lattice. And there we go, we're all leveled up. Let's say we don't want this one, we want the other one. We can just use a boon transmutation solvent and it will switch it eventually over to lattice worker. So, very nice. Once you're happy with the results, simply use a setting resin and you're good to go. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know I'm certainly super excited to get a hold of these new features. This was Jiivita. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more like this, and if there's anything you didn't like, please let me know down below. Also, if you like my channel, want to get cool perks, check out my Patreon page. Until next time, peace.